Welcome aboard the Ear to There podcast, the podcast that'll help you vacation like a pro in any Disney destination. For those of you standing, please sit down and hold on throughout our journey and get ready to learn how to have the time of your life. And now, here's your host, Phil Gramlich.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to There podcast. I'm your host, Phil Gramlich. I am also the owner and operator of Ear to There Travel, which is a Disney-specialized travel agency. It is my job to take away all that stress, all that anxiety, and all that time that it takes to plan a Disney trip so you can focus on the fun things like having a great time with your family and friends and enjoying the magic. You can find this podcast, all the articles I write, or request a free, no obligation quote over at eartotheretravel.com. Also, look for me on Facebook Live each and every Thursday night. That's a really fun way for me to get to talk to you, the listener, about the latest Disney news, your vacations, and you get the chance to ask me a question on there live that I can answer during the broadcast. So it's a lot of fun. It's interactive. It's a good time. So look for me on Facebook Live, Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and that address is facebook.com/ear-to-there-phil. All right, this is episode number 55 for the week of February 13th, 2017. Now, grab a drink, grab a snack, and as a famous mouse once said, on with the show. A few years ago, I had the chance to take my oldest daughter to her first movie in a movie theater. Of course, after the crazy critical acclaim it was getting, we had to go see Frozen. And my daughter was completely obsessed, right out of the gate. So obsessed that we bought the soundtrack to Frozen on the way home in the car, and I was playing it using my phone and the Bluetooth function over my car's speakers. And over the next few weeks, we constantly watched YouTube video after YouTube video of all of the songs from Frozen. It was on an endless loop in my house. And then one day we stumbled upon this video where this young guy was singing Let It Go in front of a microphone, but he wasn't singing it in his own voice. He was singing it in the voices of several different Disney characters. The performance was so good and that video was so well received that it went viral within hours. As a matter of fact, since that video was put up on YouTube, it has now been viewed more than 27 million times. So joining me on this episode of the show is the guy behind that video. He went on to do tons of other videos on YouTube that have millions upon millions of views. He's an actor, a voiceover artist, a singer, and one heck of a nice guy. Mr. Brian Hull, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And did I get that right? Was it 21 different voices you did on that one?
That's right, 21.
So let me just ask you, what gave you the idea? What first put that in your head that you had to do Let It Go with 21 different Disney characters and put it up on YouTube?
Well, it was actually kind of a funny thing. Before this, I wasn't a YouTuber. I didn't plan on having a career online. I was just looking around one day and I found a internet contest that was make your own cover of Let It Go. You can win a $100 gift card to the Disney store. And at the time, I was flat broke because I was in a show with my college and I had to drive to and from the theater, and that destroyed my gas money. I had to take time off work, and I'm like, well, I want to buy Frozen and Saving Mr. Banks. They were about to come out, and
yeah,
I had no money to do it. So I was like, hey, maybe I'll try this contest. And one of the rules of it were try to make your cover as creative as possible, and then that's the best way to win. So I thought, okay, well, what do I do that's different? I do cartoon voices, so let's bring Disney back to a Disney song and have Disney characters do it. I made it. I just did it really quickly because I'm like, okay, I've got a recital with school coming up and all this stuff. I don't want to hurt my voice, so did it in one take, threw it up, thought maybe 5 people would see it, and boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, you had how many? I was doing a little bit of. Listen, I can't lie to you. I do some research for these for these recordings. So I did a little bit of research, and I saw you on a different show right after it had come out. And you had something, it was some astronomical number, right, in the first few days, as far as downloads and views?
Oh, yeah, it was. I think within the first 3 days, it hit over 5 million views.
Man, that is insane. So did you win the $100 gift card?
I actually missed the deadline.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was hysterical just because it's one of those things, you pull up a website and you leave it there kind of like on your browser so you don't forget it.
Right.
And it was about 3 or 4 days later. And by that time, the contest was over and I didn't know. But the contest actually figured out that I made that video for them. And they wrote me and said, you should have entered it. You should have emailed us. You would have won.
Yeah, really.
I was just like, hey, I saw a bunch of kids were after this competition now. I didn't want some kid waking up going, Mommy, did we win the gift card? No, some kid who went viral got it.
Some college student.
I know. I'm just like, hey, I went viral. That's my prize. Y'all give it to the kids.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can't imagine overnight people like, you went from being, you're average. You're from Texas, right? Or am I crazy?
No, I'm from Texas.
Yeah, so you went from a college kid in Texas to somebody who was like an instant celebrity, like overnight. That had to be crazy.
It was insane. To this day, I've talked with a couple other people that this has happened to, going viral that quickly. And what happens is, for like the first month, you're kind of just in a fog because you're seeing your life happen, but you just feel like this can't really be my life.
Yeah.
What happened? I wasn't like this yesterday because I couldn't go anywhere around college campus without somebody stopping me, or I was doing TV show interviews and radio interviews, and Disney called me and everything else. And I'm like, this is my life? I'm super happy, but this can't be my life.
Yeah, really. So Disney called you. What did they call you for?
Well, they called me because they obviously saw the video, right, and they reached out saying, hey, we were really impressed by what we heard. We'd love to get you down to the studio and give you a professional audition and kind of just show you around. And I was like, well, sign me up.
Right, of course. So did you get to do that?
Yeah, I did. Not a month after that video went out, me and my family were on a flight out to LA, and
wow,
they took us out to the studio lot out here in Burbank, and I got to see so many different parts. I got to talk to like the president of Disney Animation. The whole thing was hosted by the Disney Character Voices department. And they were all just so wonderful. It was literally a trip of a lifetime for someone like me who studied animation and voice acting ever since I was a kid. This was on my bucket list of things to do, was just to go see the studio one day.
Yeah.
I never imagined it would be a private invitation to get a full tour by some of the bigwigs over there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
Wow, man, that's such a cool story. That was actually where I was going next, was where did this come from? Is it something that since you were, is it one of the stories that you were 4 years old and you've been doing voices as long as you can remember? Or did you, start this as a college student? When did you start realizing that you could do this?
I really discovered I did this around middle school. I tried to play around with stuff when I was a kid, but obviously when your voice hasn't changed, everything just kind of sounds like a 4-year-old kid or whatever. But around the time my voice changed in middle school, I'd studied enough animation at this point to know that there were guys like Jim Cummings or Rob Paulson, these guys who just do dozens and dozens of characters and none of them sound the same. And I was just like, oh, that's totally normal. And then I watched shows like Full House and saw Joey Gladstone doing all this. And I just thought that was a totally normal thing. So I started learning voices. And I remember the first one I learned was because I was watching Full House. And Joey Gladstone did a Scooby-Doo impression. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could do that. And I just popped out. I was like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard, and I'm not being mean to either of these guys, I've never heard Jim Cummings and Joey Gladstone mentioned in the same conversation, I don't think. But that's really funny. Jim Cummings is one of my favorite all-time Disney characters, and it's Darkwing Duck. I'm right about that, right?
Darkwing Duck,
yeah.
Yes. Oh, so, that character is so wonderful.
Yeah, I was just in, I go to Walt Disney World a lot for my job, and just because I'm a former cast member, I'm a super fan. Right now in my office, I have this little tiny, moved into my house about 6 months ago, our new house. My office, I couldn't even tell you, it's a closet basically. I designed it as a little podcast studio / office, just covered in like Disney memorabilia. I have like a Disneyland map from I think it was from '87, a Magic Kingdom map from '74, I think it is, framed on my walls. I mean, I have attractions posters everywhere. I'm that crazy person. But when I went to Walt Disney World a few weeks ago, I was wearing my Darkwing Duck shirt. I have like just a t-shirt, and so many people stopped me to be like, "Oh my God, I love your shirt." That is one of those iconic characters that I think kind of got lost, and I hope somehow they get to bring that back in some way.
I mean, they're bringing back DuckTales right now, so who knows? A Darkwing Duck was still in the Disney Afternoon lineup, so maybe one day it could come back in some way or fashion.
I hope so. You were a little young, right, for the Disney Afternoons, or were you?
I got the tail end of the Disney Afternoon. Like Gummy Bears was definitely before my time. I still watched it because they still had reruns on occasion. But like the shows from the Disney Afternoon that I really paid attention to was like Tailspin, the Aladdin series, Timon and Pumbaa show. Those that was really where I started. But I still caught some of Darkwing Duck and DuckTales and Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, they were more in my wheelhouse. And I may have been a little old for those, but I watched.
Hey, you're
those.
Never too old for Disney.
Yeah, never too old for cartoons. I have a young sister. My sister's 8 years younger than me, so I always watched her after school. So we watched what she wanted to watch. So it was all Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers and Tailspin, and they were the good old days when they had great cartoons on in the afternoon. Now with the darn internet, my kids don't wait for anything. Like they don't understand that we used to have to wait for TV shows to come on. Like,
oh, I know.
They just
and then there was,
there
was they had the new episode that would come out, and you're like, I gotta be there, but then you had some thing you had to go do with your parents. You're just like, I can't watch it till a rerun comes on, and who knows when that'll be.
Yeah. My kids now can be anywhere, and I'll have my phone, and they know I can access Xfinity Live or Xfinity and get Sophia the First or Doc McStuffins or something. So yeah, I sound so old. I'm like, these kids today, but it's true. They do. Like my kids are spoiled, and it's the way it goes. So like, how long? Like, when do you start working on a voice? Right? Do you hear a voice and then instantly know you can do it, or is it something that takes a lot of work and looking in a mirror and practice and everything else?
It depends on the characters. Every once in a while, I get those really easy ones, like with Scooby-Doo. I didn't really work on him. He just popped out of my mouth one day. But then there's others that I spend months and months and months just like trying to create. Winnie the Pooh was one of those. He turned out to be one of the hardest voices I've ever learned, and I didn't realize that when I started working on him. But with Winnie the Pooh, his voice is very difficult to replicate because it is high and low at the same time.
Dude, I have to tell you, Winnie the Pooh is phenomenal. It is.
Well, thank you.
It is perfect. I loved. I was talking to you before I hit record. I loved the video you did of you speaking to the Disneyland characters in their voices. And Winnie the Pooh's reaction was great when you asked him for honey, and he turned around to the honey pot that he had behind him to get you some. It's very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's such a neat thing. And so, okay, so you start doing the voices. So you said you were kind of a Disney fan first, right? And then you started doing the voices after. When did you realize, was it that you could, hey, I can make this into, like, I could do this. Like, I can make this into a career. Was it after the Let It Go video came out?
Yeah, it was after Let It Go, because people have been telling me for years, it's like, you've got this stuff, you've got this know-how, you've got the love for animation as a whole. I'm one of those nerds. My bookshelf is full of like how to do animation and the history of it. I've got so many documentaries about animation as a whole, it's ridiculous. But I never believed I was good enough. I was just like, well, these are good for family and friends, but it's not like Disney's ever going to call me and say, hey, we like your voices, come down to the studio. If that ever happened, I'd do it, but it'll never happen. And then I sure ate those words later.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's so cool. So what's your ideal voiceover role to get, right? Would you rather do Disney, animated movies? Would you rather do the TV shows? Would you rather be in video games? Do you have a preference? Like, what's your dream job?
Well, I'll happily do just about anything. I've done video games, movies, all that good, big stuff. But my absolute dream role that if I got that, I'd die the happiest man on the face of the earth is if I could premiere a Disney sidekick in a new Disney animation feature. Like to do the new Olaf or the new Pascal or the new Timon or Pumbaa. If I could get that role, I'd die the happiest man on the face of the earth.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So you want to be the new Josh Gad, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see you being the new Josh Gad. Seriously, that like and again, no disrespect to Josh Gad, not that he's gonna listen to this, but I honestly had never heard of him. I know he had done a lot of things, but maybe it's because my radar is mostly Disney movies and kids shows for the last 6 years. But until he did Olaf, and then all of a sudden he does Olaf and he blows up, and he's in everything. He's hosting, the 60th anniversary of Disneyland special, and he's doing movies with Daisy Ridley now, and he's in the live action Beauty and the Beast, and so cool. So yeah, why? Of course that can happen for you. Why not? Right? You're there now. You just have to. You have to have the right break, the right thing go your way, and you're there.
Oh yeah, and my big thing is it's like in my experience with Disney, the characters that meant the most to me were always the side characters. So like in Mulan, I would always be attracted to Mushu, or Lion King. My favorites were always Timon and Pumbaa. Like they're the ones I related to the most. So I feel like if I got one of those roles, I wouldn't even really be acting. It's just like go be you for an hour and a half.
Yeah, to be the goofy guy in a corner who's doing the voice, of course. Yeah. And again, your Timon and Pumbaa are phenomenal. I don't want to. I told myself I sound like I don't know if you remember the Chris Farley show on Saturday Night Live where he was like, "Do you remember when you did?" He was talking to Paul McCartney and he was like, "Remember when you were with the Beatles? That was awesome." Like I don't want to be that guy, but I told myself I wouldn't ask you to do impressions, but I do have to say your Timon and Pumbaa together is, and I don't know how do you do that? How do you separate? Like I've seen your videos where you just go back and forth between the characters. How can you keep that straight in your head?
Well, there's a couple of different ways that I do it. Yeah, of course, you start with a conversation. You just start in the middle of a sentence, and then all of a sudden switch to a different character. So pretty much what I'm doing is in my brain, as I'm doing one character, like as I'm doing Pumbaa, my brain is already prepping in that sentence when I'm going to switch to Timon, and my brain is already thinking, okay, what muscles do you need to move to get Timon right there? So I can switch that fluently. So like when I'm talking as Pumbaa, I'm already thinking about what Timon's going to be doing and saying.
That's amazing. So your brain is like a couple steps ahead of you before your voice gets there. That's
exactly.
Wild. Yeah, that's wild. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like, did you ever see the video where I did the 100 voice impression marathon?
Yes. Yep.
So if you look at that really closely, you realize I never blink. And the reason why is because in front of me, I actually have a screen that has all these characters in order that I'm doing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm flipping through that with a little remote that I have off screen. And I'm literally looking at the next character, and my brain is already there while my mouth is saying the character right before it.
That's wild. I don't know how you can manage doing something like that. That's very cool.
That's a little peek into my brain, which people have told me is a very strange place to be.
Yeah. What's funny is before my wife and I put our kids to bed tonight, a little while ago, we're recording this at night. Night for me, it's not very late for you, but we watched a bunch of them because my daughter, my 6-year-old, she's very interested in Disney, and obviously we go down 3 times a year. I think she's 6. I think she's taken at least 16 trips to Walt Disney World in 6 years. I mean, it's a little bordering on obsessive, but we were watching your videos and she was watching, and I said she couldn't get over it. Like her eyes were wide and she was staring like she couldn't believe that you could do that. It's such an amazing talent to go back and forth between all those voices. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to switch gears on you really quickly because I wanted to talk about, again, your Disneyland, when you went to Disneyland and did all the characters, as I mentioned, when you did Pooh and spoke to Pooh and Pooh's voice. And I'm going to put a link to that video on the show notes for this episode because I love the reactions of the characters. And I said before we started recording that I love Donald's reactions the best because Donald just completely flipped out when he started doing the Donald Duck voice. It was awesome. And I wanted to ask you, like, is that something that you went obviously to Disneyland that day with that in mind, right? I mean, you have a camera, you're recording it. Do you come up with these ideas for these videos on your own, or do you have, your entourage that's helping you work on them?
Well, majority of it is me. I do have a bit of an entourage. There are a group of friends that I have that will be super honest with me, and it's kind of like I'll come up with a group of ideas, and then we meet once every couple months or so, and they can tell me, yeah, it's a good idea, or that's stupid, don't ever do that. So they kind of bounce ideas off that way. And doing impressions at Disneyland of the characters is one of the ones everyone really seemed to agree on. So I was just like, okay. And then I sat down one day and decided who I would talk to and do all this. But I was honestly not sure what to expect because I played around with it once. I did it to Goofy a year or two ago, and he was kind of playing it off just like he would, kind of shake his hand in a wobbly way, kind of like, that voice is okay, not that great. And I'm like, oh, come on, man, come on. So I was
got to give you a break.
So I was expecting to get something like that, but I thought, you know what, let's just take the camera, let's try it. If we get some great stuff, great. If not, we might find one or two that are decent enough. But they were all so wonderful. Yeah, they were great. I was just like, great. I wasn't expecting this. And Donna was just the icing on the cake because that was the last thing I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, your reaction to Donald was great too. When you were saying goodbye and Donald wasn't ready to end the interaction yet. I mean, you got another hug and another reaction. It was very cool to see. Very cool.
One of my Disneyland friends, they were over and they saw it before it went up, and they just patted me on the back and said, Donald hugged you 3 times. That is an honor, sir. It's an honor.
It's like a record. My kids, Donald's like pushing my kids away normally when we. He's like, all right, it's good. He's been here for 30 seconds, enough. But yeah, I mean, it was great. That it's a great video, and I want to make sure everybody gets to see that. So, all right, so my show is this. The Ear to Their podcast is about helping my listeners and people who just tune into the show have a great time on their Disney vacations, right? Like I always say, I want them to have the knowledge and have a great time like I would have. So like I said, you look like you're having just an absolute blast with the characters in the parks, and it's so much fun for you. So this might be kind of a weird question, but what can I do, or what can my kids do, right, who don't do the voices? What can they do? Or listen, if you heard my voice, as you can hear my speaking voice, I'm not going to be doing very many characters. So what can I do, or what can my kids do to have that kind of interaction, to have that much fun with the characters in the Disney parks?
Well, one of the things you can do is, I know I've met a lot of cast members, talked to them. Anything you can do to show that you're passionate about it and you're willing to have fun with the characters, that they really appreciate that. Like walking up and instead of just saying, hi, Pooh, it's great to see you, just like walking up and say, well, hey there. Hey, has Rabbit been messing, with this garden lately? I know normally he gets a little apprehensive about everybody messing with the garden, but I see you've got some nice plants over here, and I know you're taking care of it though. You're not feeding them honey, are you? You're playing around with the character. Right. You don't have to do a voice, but you're like incorporating a story in there, and then they can interact and work with that. So then it may take a little more work on your part beforehand, but this is what cast members are trained for. It's like they know these movies and these stuff inside and out.
Yeah, they know the answers already before you even ask the question. It's true. I have my daughter ask. She's into that type of thing, where she asks all the character specific questions. She asked Tiana a few weeks ago if she had a good recipe for gumbo, and Tiana rattled off a gumbo recipe off the top of her head. It was pretty impressive, I had to say. Like, she just gave her the ingredients and told her how to do it. Meanwhile, my daughter's 6, and she's just standing there with her mouth open, nodding. Like, I can't believe she just did that. So yeah, that's a great tip, because that is something that I think you're right. I think people do go up to them and just do the hello thing and hi, and here's my autograph book. And I think there's so much more fun that you could have with the characters. And people don't really know. And I think people look at it as, a time like suck. Like I'm going to sit here in the sun, wait for this character for a half hour, and then get an autograph and walk away. When it can be so much more, as you prove, even with your videos, you can. They're ready to have a blast, I think. So
they are.
Cool.
That's what gives them like the energy to keep going throughout the day, because otherwise they're just standing there in a really hot suit.
Yeah.
Or for the younger viewers listening, it's warm outside.
No, there's only one. There's only one of every character, and they do those costumes they wear are pretty hot.
Yeah. So
Mickey gets hot in the hat and the jacket at California Adventure all day.
Oh, I'm sure. And then, because there's tons of ways I love to have fun, especially like I've messed with the Mad Hatter a couple times before this video. It was a different Mad Hatter, like a different actor. And I went up to him and I was talking with him and we were just having fun. And at one point he asked me, "Do you like riddles?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love riddles." He's like, "Great, tell me one." So I thought I was cute, right? So I quote the one they did in the movie, just like, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" And he actually had an answer, which was awesome. He just piped up and said, "Oh, you had to bring up that one." Well, let me tell you, there is an answer to that one. It was in the movie, but then Alice was in charge of editing and she cut it out. But it's actually Edgar Allan Poe, because he wrote The Raven on a writing desk. And I was like, that's actually really good, man.
That's great. I love that they can do that in character. It's they do the whole thing in character. It's amazing.
Oh, and he just kept going on. It's like, it was supposed to go in the movie, but then it got cut out by Alice, and then she sold it to some little company called Lucasfilm. I bet you never heard of it. And it was supposed to go in this itty-bitty little movie called Empire Strikes Back. But, I also said I was your father at one point, and I guess that inspired that part of the movie, too. And he just kept going, and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And by the way, that's an amazing impression.
Thank you.
Yeah, so cool. I'm like sitting here laughing. Like I had to hit mute on my microphone for a second because I was laughing so hard. That's great. So do you have a character that you love to do? Like, is there one that you say you're in line for any attraction in Disneyland? I know you're a fan. You go to the parks. Is there a character where you'll have a family in front of you and you'll just bust it out quietly under your breath, hoping they turn around? Like, do you have one character that you absolutely love?
Actually, yeah, I do. I've done this a couple of times, and it's really been Goofy of all characters. It's just because it's just the way his voice sits in me, where I can kind of do his voice without moving my lips or really drawing a lot of attention to me. So I'd be like, "Oh boy," and they're like looking around, like, "Where's Goofy?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And just kind of really mess with the kids in front of me.
Yeah, your Goofy's great. So is there one? How about this? Is there one that you hate to do, but everyone not hate, but you're one that you don't enjoy or don't love doing that everyone always asks you to do? Because I want to see if I'm going to ask you to do it in a little bit.
That's a good question. Well, I know the number one thing people always ask me to do is Elsa from Frozen, and I'm like, guys, I'm a bearded dude. You realize how hard that is to sound like Idina Menzel? Like, I can do a couple girl characters, but they're like really cartoony, like Snow White or Minnie Mouse. Their voices aren't just a natural woman's voice; they're cartoony. Right. So I can do those, but Idina Menzel, I just sound like a really creepy old man when I do that. So let's not go down that road.
I got to say, can I just get a little bit of the Snow White, because I on your 100 characters impressions that you do. I had to rewind that, and let's rewind like I'm 80 years old. I had to play that like 4 or 5 times in a row because I couldn't believe. Oh no, it wasn't on your 100. It was a song, I think. On your
it was
Adele.
on Hello.
Yeah, that's what it was. I'm sorry about that. It was your Hello.
Oh, it's all good.
And I actually showed my wife tonight, and she was like, "You have to ask him to do that." How did he do that?
Oh yes. Well, everyone wonders about Snow White. Whistle while you work.
Yeah, that's insane. That is insane that you can do that. So cool. I'm completely geeking out right now because I feel like I'm speaking to Adriana Castellati on the phone right now. And she passed away like what, 15 years ago?
It was something like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I actually ran into a family at Disneyland yesterday who recognized me, and that was one of the voices they asked me to do. And apparently one of the girls had seen Snow White earlier that day, and she was just like,
Mommy, he sounds more like Snow White than Snow White did.
and I'm like, I didn't know that. That's kind of creepy.
Yeah. Dude, I got to tell you, that's amazing. That's such a cool impression. I saw a video with her actually with Adriana, and she was in her like 80s. And I don't know if you know a whole lot about like her story, but when she signed on to play Snow White, there was like a clause in her contract where she couldn't do voiceover work or act for anyone else. Like Walt Disney wanted to keep the integrity of that character, which is kind of crazy, but she wasn't allowed to do anything else except for Snow White. She signed this like lifetime contract. So it was kind of sad. The video was, I found it on YouTube. You know how you fall into like a YouTube black hole and you're there.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and you're on your like 4th cup of coffee and you're still watching YouTube. It was one of those nights. And, yeah, it's her in her house and she's in her 80s and the whole house is full of Snow White memorabilia. And the actual outside of the house looks a little like it was designed, I think in like the 60s to look like the dwarf's cottage.
That is cool.
Yeah, but it's like this weird, like you kind of feel bad for her because she's been trapped as like this almost like caricature her whole life since she was a kid and played Snow White. But she can still do the voice, which is amazing because she's like in her 80s.
Wow.
Because it wasn't really far off from her regular voice. It was pretty much the same. So,
really?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like people are like, what is he talking about? Just YouTube it and look it up. It's right now my listeners are like, dude, just move on. Because I go off on these tangents all the time on this and I think some people like it and some hate it, but whatever. I do it. If you don't like it, it's my show. Anyway.
Haters gonna hate.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this. I've seen your other impressions. I know you do Looney Tunes. You do some other cartoons. Mm-hmm. Do you do any, like, okay, there's impressionists that I follow and that I really like. I really like Craig Gass. I don't know if you know who he is, stand-up comic. Then there's Frank Caliendo, I think is very good. Some other guys out there that they all have like their the ones that everybody does, right? Like the Christopher Walkens or their Al Pacinos. Do you do any of those? Do you have those, the impressionist like standards that you do?
Oh, yeah. I've got a bunch of those. I just don't draw a whole lot of attention to them because it's just one of those like, yeah, I need it for the business and I'll pull it out on occasion.
Right.
But it's not so much like with the cartoon characters. It's more of like a work of love and passion to get these characters just because I love them so much. Whereas these, it's like, all right, I need to learn it for a job. So let's just do it. And that's why I don't pull them out as much. I don't mind doing them, but I also am not like, oh boy, we get to go to Christopher Walken today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because I get it because you're, where you are and where people know you and what they know you from is this huge. I mean, you can do pretty much any Disney character they ask you to do. It's a remarkable talent. Very, very cool. And I'm looking at my list now. I'm like, I have my questions that I wanted to ask you. And one of the ones was the Snow White question. So I'm glad I asked you because that was perfect. So thank you for doing that. That was awesome.
No problem.
All right. So I asked you before and you said it was okay. So I have a few of these things. I got a couple requests from listeners and actually from my kids that they wanted to hear. Is that okay with you? Do you mind?
Sure.
Okay. So let me go to the listeners first. I had a guy that listens to the show and he wrote me on Facebook, and he wanted to hear the Cowardly Lion. And he said to tell you that his daughter is a holomaniac, which can you kind of explain what that is before or after the Cowardly Lion?
Yeah, we can do it before. So yeah, a holomaniac is what I call my followers on YouTube. It's like a little name I've given them to say, hey, you guys, these are for my loyal fans that like come and watch my videos and love what I do. If you just enjoy my content, then hey, call yourself a holomaniac. So
it's because me growing up in the 80s and as a wrestling fan, I was a Hulkamaniac. So I like your choice of fan club words. That's very cool. The Hulkamaniac.
I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I got the name from the Animaniacs
No
from
way,
the
really?
90s. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. I just heard Animaniacs, and I thought somebody recommended, it's like, what if you called this Holomaniacs? I'm like, oh, I like that. It reminds me of Wacko, Yakko, and Dot.
Oh, that's so funny. When Hulk Hogan was big in the 80s, his big thing was he called the kids his little Hulkamaniacs.
I never heard of that before.
Yeah, come on, man. There you go. So now, if you ever run into Hulk Hogan somewhere, you have something in common with him. You're pretty close. You're one letter off.
Maybe that's why somebody wrote in asking how I felt about wrestling.
Yeah, it could be. So
yeah, they're like, what has wrestling meant to you? I'm like, I don't know. I've never watched it.
Well, now you know. Now, if you get another weird wrestling question, as an adult, I don't watch wrestling anymore. I watched it when I was a kid, but there are plenty of people that like it. Like, people like the fake violence. And I know it's big in Texas. Right? It used to be back in the 80s anyway. So now you know why people will send you those weird questions sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So the Cowardly Lion was the one request that she had, which I didn't know you did. So I'm kind of interested in that one.
Oh yeah, I do the Cowardly Lion, so he's a lot of fun. Okay. Put him up. If I were the king of the forest.
Well done, man. That's awesome. All right, so I'm just going to kind of go. I have a couple more. I'm going to go kind of rapid fire. This one is out of left field. I don't know. I don't even know this voice. So J. Thaddeus Toad. Can you do a Mr. Toad voice?
Ooh, J. Thaddeus Toad. I have not watched that short in a while.
Don't worry about it if you can. It was a request, and I said I would ask.
I feel like I could do Cyril the horse better than I could do Mr. Toad, because I worked on Cyril a lot because he had that great line in the short. I could do Cyril, but I don't think I could do Toad right now.
All right, don't worry about it. All right, let's go on. We'll move on. Got a couple more. How about Stitch?
Naga Krista!
It's great. And another one, Goofy.
Oh, yeah. You're going to love my Maxie.
And two more. Roz from Monsters, Inc.
Wazowski, you didn't file your paperwork last night. Don't let it happen again.
And that was my daughter, my Alexa. She does that voice. It's not that good, but she's working on it. It's a work in progress. She does it. She does the voice, and it cracks me up. So I told her I would ask her to do it. And last but not least, my favorite voice that I've heard you do, and the one that got the biggest reaction in that YouTube video with the Disneyland characters, you're Donald Duck.
I got to get some spit in my mouth for this one.
That's amazing. Dude, that's amazing. That's incredible. I can do that. I'm with every voice. I'm blown away. So cool.
Oh, thank you.
No, man, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's been so cool to talk to you, and I wish you really, literally, sincerely the best of luck and everything out there. I hope your big break comes really, really soon, and you're in a Disney movie, and your name is up in the lights very, very soon, because your work is awesome. You're a good dude, and yeah, I mean, best of luck to you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man, seriously. So if people want to find more from you, want to check out your videos, anything, where can they go? Where can I send them?
The best place to go is youtube.com/Brian Hull Voices.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I put a link to the show notes in there as well, so everybody can kind of follow you and see what you're up to. And yeah, I know you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you're on Snapchat, I think, right? So everybody can give you a follow. They can find out all that information on YouTube, probably, right?
Yeah, if you look on any of my videos, just look in the little description box. There's links to all my social media, so you should be able to find me very easily.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you again so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I just have to ask you one more favor before I let you go. Could you do a quick Mickey Mouse for me just to round out the show?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to Year to Their Travel. And we'll see you next time.
Brian, thank you so much. That was awesome. Thanks again.
No
I
problem.
appreciate it. Take care.
All right, you too.
And that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ear to There podcast. Thank you once again to my guest, Brian Hull. I hope all of his Hullamaniacs listen to this episode because it was a lot of fun to record. As you can tell, I kept laughing and just being in complete awe of this guy the entire episode. I mean, what this guy can do is absolutely amazing. My best Mickey Mouse impression is still probably the worst one you've ever heard. You know what? I'm going to try it. Nobody listens to the ends of these podcast episodes anyway. Let me try it. Here we go. You ready? Oh, boy. That was it. Let's see if anyone thought that was horrible, let me know. And if anyone thinks I'm even in the ballpark, let me know. And just for the record, all I can do in that voice is the haha, oh boy thing. I mean, I'm not even attempting something else. Anyway, thank you again so much to Brian Hull, and thank you for listening to this episode. As always, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. And I just wanted to take one moment to personally thank a couple of people who left reviews on iTunes this week. Thank you so much to JDG5, who wrote a Disney Parks Must. Phil does a great job with both Disney history and current day park tips. Very enjoyable because you can really tell that Phil is a Disney fan first and not a fact snob. His Word of the Week segments are a must for Disney history fans. Thank you so much to JDG5 for that awesome review. And another great review came in from Ben Busy Writing on iTunes. It's a 5-star review. It says, great podcast. I've been listening to WDW Radio. That's my friend Lou Mangello's show. You might have heard of that one. It's only the most popular Disney podcast ever. Okay, back to the review. For about 6 years. Since then, I have been looking for another podcast to listen to alongside it. I have been through dozens of podcasts, always unsatisfied. I finally landed on Phil's Ear to There podcast. It is always enjoyable to listen to with lots of great tips and info. Good job, Phil. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much again, Ben Busy Writing, for your review. That is awesome. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you again for listening. If you're listening to this, if you're hearing this right now, I really, really, really appreciate you. Thank you for listening. And just remember, there will be a new episode of the Ear to There podcast each and every Monday morning, as well as a new episode of the Ear to There podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. And that'll be each and every Wednesday morning. And now we have the new Facebook Live. That's each and every Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. So look out for that. And thank you guys so much again. Until next time, have a great week. Bye-bye.